And welcome to this edition of the Native News Update on this Wednesday, March 7th. I'm your host for today's program, and first of all, we want to announce that in what appears to be a hardball bargaining tactic or a flat-out admission that its proposed iron mine in northern Wisconsin can't meet reasonable environmental standards and public scrutiny, Gogebic Taconite President Bill Williams issued a statement late Tuesday, March 6th that says the company will be leaving the state of Wisconsin. The Senate sent a clear message that Wisconsin will not welcome iron mining. We get the message. And today we go to Mark Trahant and a little information about what happened in yesterday's Super Tuesday primaries. Mark Trahant, thanks for joining with us again on the Native News Update to talk a little bit about politics in the primary. We had Super Tuesday yesterday and the results are in. You just said it's kind of fascinating. Tell me why you're saying that.
Well, for a number of reasons. One, we still have a process that's unfolding that we don't know the real outcome yet. It's still up in the air. I'll just give you one example of kind of the craziness. The Daily Cost, which is a Democratic website, inspired, had a story that if you do the math in Ohio and take away the counties where Rick Santorum was not on the ballot, and there were 3 such counties where he didn't meet the signature requirement.
Right.
If you add those back in, Santorum would have won Ohio, which goes to show how really convoluted the process is and how weak Romney is as a potential nominee.
This race, indeed. In fact, let me tell you what I'm reading here today, that Sarah Palin apparently stepped out of the polling booth and mumbled something about maybe it would be a good time to get back into the presidential race in Alaska. There's 24 delegates up there, went to Santorum yesterday. They're not, the rest of them aren't in or something, but what were you going to say?
I said we should be so lucky.
Doesn't it seem like there's some dissatisfaction going on? Whatever's going on seems to be razor thin, and people move about from week to week. So there seems to be a general dissatisfaction with what you might call the standard bearer of the primary Republican message.
Right. The states, for example, that Romney won were very conservative, like Idaho and Alaska, but they're Western conservatives. He hasn't picked up any southern states yet, unless you count Florida, which most people don't. So he's got to prove that he can win that constituency. He has a hard road to go. I mean, it's going to be a long process. He still is probably going to win it, still has the more name ID than anybody else. But if Gingrich drops out of the race soon, Santorum could be the other. And there are several more southern primaries, including Texas. And that could augur well for him.
Do you think that Santorum would be the beneficiary of Gingrich getting out of the race at this particular point?
If he did, yeah.
Yeah, because we're going into the southern now. Gingrich had a massive win in Georgia yesterday, taking 37 delegates. Romney got 8. Santorum won.
Right.
He had to win Georgia to be able to even get up and breathe today, didn't he?
Yeah, that was his home state, and he was there a long time, and absolutely. But what's interesting is he put some resources into trying to take Tennessee and couldn't. Santorum wiped him out there. So I was behind Romney.
Yeah, Gingrich took 5 delegates there, Romney 8, and Santorum 21. Oklahoma, Gingrich took 8 there, 8 for Romney in Oklahoma, and 10 there. So let's look at the current delegate count. 80 to Gingrich, which means he could be a broker. 2 to Huntsman, 24 to Ron Paul, 361 for Romney, leaving he needs 1,144, so he's 700 some delegates left, and Santorum 112. At this point, Romney is ahead by 60% to Santorum, so there's a lot of catching up there to do it. I mean, Romney could do it, perhaps, on the first ballot, but razor thin?
And if it keeps this many candidates in, maybe nobody's going to get there.
Right. And
maybe strategy is just to stay in the race.
Is it possible that Gingrich can be kind of embittered, and of course Paul doesn't have a whole lot of delegates, but between Gingrich and Paul, they could be spoilers in going into this and prevent either one of these guys from getting it. I mean, do you get a dark horse or one with red lipstick from Alaska showing up at the last minute?
Well, and Ron Paul would be interesting. I think if push comes to shove, I think he goes with Romney. Paul has been very complimentary of him. He hasn't had the personal attacks that either Santorum or Gingrich has had. And I think part of Ron Paul's strategy is to build this race for his son in 4 years and let Rand Paul run.
Is there any indication here that this may be a tiring of the real far right as well, even within the Republican Party?
Well, it certainly could be. The demographics do not favor them over the long haul. I mean, essentially, it's a party of white people. And as the numbers decline in this country, that's going to be an issue. One of the things that could blow up on Republicans very soon is there's rumblings on Capitol Hill about breaking down and reneging on the budget deal that was so painfully put together last year. And if that happens, all hell breaks loose.
Well, that's interesting. We move along on the presidential ballot. Yesterday there was some successes in Wisconsin. A federal judge has issued an injunction against a voter ID law that was passed by the Republicans, which has already turned tribal members with photo IDs away from booths in one of the early local primary elections run by a county. There was several tribal members where the clerk simply says, we're not going to recognize tribal IDs, whether it was a personal issue or some other issue with the ID. A judge has issued an injunction against that. Gogebic Taconite Company, which has been pressing for a real liberalized environmental protection mining bill in Wisconsin, said they're pulling out tomorrow, which was kind of the showcase of the Walker administration for this year. And of course, he's under fire now with certification of his recall due shortly. And again, he's the darling of the Tea Party right, heavily funded by Koch brothers and other people. And much of the legislation coming up is coming out of ALEC, which is that Koch-funded think tank group. Where are they all going with this? It seems like every week there's about a half a point notch on Obama's popularity rating that goes up. Are the Republicans reelecting Obama?
In part, I think the president is also really fortunate in that the economy right now seems to be picking up, and that helps him as much as anything. Hopefully that will stick through November, but that's certainly, gas prices is one that sometimes is an issue. But if the economy is coming back, I think people will live with gas prices.
You're in Italy today. Tell me a little bit about how do the conversations go? Are people asking you about things like the Republican primary, the economy, Obama? Is that a topic of discussion, or?
Sure. People want to know who won what, and there's a great deal of interest in that. And yeah, people are curious about how the United States sees these things, particularly with Italy, because Italy has its own financial crisis.
Right.
And this is northern Italy, which is very near the Swiss border. And this part of Italy is very productive. People go to work on time. They work hard. And so they don't particularly have the same feelings about people in the South, where unemployment is much, much higher. And the whole idea of productivity is different.
Oh, that's interesting. How about the whole issue of it? My impression is that people in Europe, individual countries, tend to pay a lot more attention to U.S. politics than people in the United States pay any attention to politics in Europe at all.
I think that's true, but just too bad, because Europe right now is a fascinating story with what different countries are doing. I mean, one of the great ironies is the Republicans run against Europe and talk about how dangerous Europe is and basically how we should get away from their notions. Yet Europe is on this austerity kick that would be the idol of the Republicans. I mean, they're doing exactly what the Republicans want in terms of cutting government programs, and it's been very, very painful for the populations here.
It seems to me that out of Europe has come many models of government. You know, some historians say, well, we took democracy from Europe, but which is false because they took it a lot by observing tribal nations and how they operated from my observations. But there is also experimentations, it seems to me, in what you call plurality and consensus voting and things like that. Can you explain a little bit at all about some of those models over there?
Sure. Really, there are only two Western countries left in the world that stick with a system called first past the post, which is a system where you divide the country up into congressional districts, and whoever wins that district wins. In the rest of the world, they want to make sure that everybody has representation. So let's say they'll take a state like Wisconsin, and if 60% of it is liberal, they'll make sure that 60% of the congressional seats are liberal, 40%. Whereas our system is very skewed. If you win in a congressional district, that's it. It kind of it makes it very likely that an incumbent will win compared to a proportional representation system. It's really a different way of thinking. And the way they do this is when you vote 3 times. You vote for who you really want, who would be second choice, and who would be third choice, and they go down the ballot that way until they get a result of 50% or more.
That's interesting. We tried that at a straw poll vote the other night and got results that were a little bit different in terms of what I call the plurality consensus candidate. It forces people to generate coalitions a lot more, it seems to me, rather than right or left.
Yeah, that's exactly true. And there are a lot more parties in Europe because of it. I mean, most countries have 4 or 5 parties that all are players.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the biggest complaints, that we basically have a 2-party system here that's not going to go away no matter what we do with libertarians or green parties. They just can't get a foot in the door because of this majority 51% vote thing rather than plurality representation. Right. Mark, what else?
One other thing I want to mention about Europe. I've been looking, I'm writing partly about sustainability issues while I'm here for a book I'm working on. And today on my website, I'm posting pictures of a couple of ideas about sustainability. The first one I'll post today is on shutters. And you don't think of shutters being a very big deal, but the energy savings you get can be enormous, and they're everywhere here. And so it's just a short photo essay of shutters.
Well, I like that idea. I like that reporting. I think I saw a little photo report on stairwells the other day that I thought very interesting as well, Mark. So,
yeah, I'll put that on my website later this week.
Sustainability is going to be a big issue. People growing food in former urban areas of Detroit, Michigan, people growing food on the top of apartment buildings, on their porches and stuff like that. Slow food, we want to get back to that. Maybe we'll do a little comparison with what you're seeing over there in the future, but we're almost out of time. 1 minute, what else do you have to say to the world?
Well, given that it's late here, it's dinner time, and around here in this facility, they actually try to get foods from less than 25 meters away, so, or not 25 meters.
Miles, kilometers?
Miles, kilometers.
Kilometers, yeah, you're still doing the conversion there. But anyway, it's grow local, eat local. You don't have to worry about pesticides as much, refrigeration, gas, all those things. Slow food, let's talk a little bit about more of that from what you see and observe over there in conduct. We'll get back to you. Thanks for joining with us again, Mark.
Okay, see you, Paul.
And that's another roundup of news from Indian Country on this edition of the Native News Update. Thanks for joining with us.